This is episode number 178. Today, we're featuring the amazing art dealer, Jane Bell Meyer.
This is the Plein Air Podcast with Eric Rhoads, publisher and founder of Plein Air Magazine. In the Plein Air Podcast, we cover the world of outdoor painting. Called Plein Air, the French coined the term, which means open air or outdoors. The French pronounce it Plein Air. Others say Plein Air. No matter how you say it, there is a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. And this show is about that movement. Now, here's your host, author, publisher, and painter, Eric Rhoads.
Thank you, Jim Kipping, and welcome everybody to the Plein Air Podcast. Summer is in full swing, and I am hearing from lots of you who've been released and are painting. Man, I don't know about you, but I sure appreciate it more than ever. I've been trying to do at least one plein air piece a day, and my goal is to do it every day, almost all summer, although I've slipped up a couple of times and missed a couple. But I've already done more paintings this summer than I've done all last summer, so I feel I'm making some improvements. So that's a pretty cool thing. I would say that things have been on fire around here at Streamline Publishing. We announced our Plein Air Live global experience, and we are seeing people from around the world who are painters signing up. It is a phenomenon. It's taking place July 15th through 19th, 4 full days with amazing painters. Plus, there's a beginner's day on the 14th. And if you're listening and you want to learn the ropes of plein air painting, and you want to find out, what to take outside, how you go outside, what easels, what type of demos, what kind of mediums you want, all the other features you need this day. And you do not need to sign up for the whole event. You can just do the beginner's day, but you're going to want to sign up for the entire Plein Air Live event because it's historic. We've got some huge names from around the world, like Haiti Joe Summer in England, Antonin Passanard in France, Leon Holmes in Australia, and others around the globe, plus amazing U.S. painters like Scott Christensen. What a phenomenon. Jill Carver, Catherine Statz, Kevin McPherson, Albert Handel, John McDonald, and many more. 4 days of complete virtual stuff. This is the first time in history in the plein air community where we have come together as one worldwide, as one big family. And I wanted to do that after COVID because we need each other. We need to know each other. We need the embrace of one another as a virtual community. We need our community, so you do not want to miss it. Sign up before we reach our seat limit with technology. This is virtual, so you don't have to spend thousands on event tickets and travel and hotels and meals and all that. And you can do it in the comfort of your own living room, so you don't need to worry about wearing a mask. We are all ready to get out together, and this is a great way to do it and come together as a world plein air community. And as I said, this is the first time in history this has been done for the plein air community and a virtual global experience. It's called Plein Air Live, and you can learn more about it at pleinairlive.com. But do it fast because it's just, I've never seen anything like it in my career. It is just absolutely exploding. Also, though we have this global historic event, it is not a replacement for our live in-person experiences like the Plein Air Convention, which is taking place this August in Santa Fe. It looks like we're going to be able to do it. We've got an amazing lineup, almost 80 instructors, incredible instructors. Most of them are coming. I think we lost one, maybe two, but we've replaced them already. And there is nothing quite like live because you get the experience of being together with your friends. Of course, we're following protocols. It's safe, it's exciting, and it's our first time in the summer doing a convention. That way, many more can come than normal because of school teachers and people like that who can't get off, or families that have kids in school. So sign up at pleinairconvention.com. And remember, we have a COVID guarantee, meaning if we have to reschedule or you can't make it or it doesn't feel safe or the state doesn't let us do it or something, you will get 100% of your money back if you want it, or we can apply it to a future event. Anyway, you can sign up at pleinairconvention.com. Convention.com. And coming up after the interview, I'm going to be answering your art marketing questions in the Art Marketing Minute. Now, today's interview is going to blow you away. There are lots and lots and lots of unexpected gifts, treasures, Easter eggs, if you will, things like getting into galleries from the perspective of a gallery owner, and an amazing one at that. So let's get right to our interview. Jane Bell Meyer, welcome to the Plein Air Podcast.
Thank you.
It's
Glad to be here.
Such a pleasure to have you on. You know, you've been a huge proponent and in terms of building the plein air community and doing things that bring attention to plein air. And I want to talk about your annual event, and I also want to talk about the gallery business in general, artists in galleries, and just a number of things that what I think people will find interesting.
Wonderful. Let's go.
Let's do this. So, Jane, let's kind of back up and go to the beginning. Have you always done this art thing, or is this something that came later in your career?
Okay, I'll give you a little background. I was raised on a ranch by Jackson, Wyoming, but it was Alta, Wyoming. And I just loved art. I was the oddball in our family, and I looked at art. I wanted to go in galleries, and no one else did, but I did, and I tried it myself. But I was a singer and loved to sing and loved to act. And in college, I took my last class in art. And I knew the professor because my mother taught at the college, so I lived in that town. And I knew I had done a pretty good piece. And so I was wanting a compliment, so I was reeling that in. And the professor said, really, you want to know, Jane? And I knew I was better than some of the guys in the class, not as good as the others. And he said, I'm going to tell you the truth. And I said, well, I want it. And he said, please, please keep singing. And so I knew that probably art was not my thing, but I went on to be a professional actress and singer as a living, and for years did that. But I was in rock bands at first and used my gig money to start buying art. And so I became a collector when I was 19 years old.
Really?
And it never stopped.
So I have other questions that related to what you just said. First off, what kind of things were you collecting at 19 years old?
Well, I really loved I loved figurative work. I've always been drawn to it. But, of course, I was surrounded by the most beautiful scenery, so I loved that as well. So I tended to like things that were more traditional. I didn't respond to splashes of color that meant nothing to me.
Right.
I had to know what it was in order to be drawn to it. Now I can appreciate it. While I still don't want it in my home, I don't want the abstract things. But I really love to be out in nature. And so I think most of the pieces in my house are places that I've been, or they look like places that I've been. And I've spent a lot of time in the mountains and fishing and on horses and backpacking and out on the ocean. And I dive and I deep sea fish and I hike. And so I'm drawn to those things in my home. And plein air work is that. And so it brings it home to me all around, so I don't have to go anywhere.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And so I was drawn to plein air work right from the first. I didn't know what to call it back then. I would buy pieces that my friends did on site, not knowing I was buying plein air pieces.
Well, not very many people knew that term back then.
No, they didn't.
So tell me just
In
briefly.
fact, I don't really know when that term came to be. I know that it probably came to be when the French didn't want the Americans to call it the same thing they did.
Well, you know, there's a lot of debate. I have looked through some history books, and I originally thought that the term plein air came from the time of the Impressionists, and yet I have found it as references many, many years, as early as 100 years before that. So, you know, of course, the term plein air in French just means outdoors. I mean, if you read a plein air magazine in France, it's like reading Outdoor magazine. And so I don't think it was necessarily intended as a painting style originally. So I don't know. I think that's always curious. We've always been kind of trying to figure out the answer to that question.
Well, I've looked it up myself. I was hoping you had that answer for me today.
Yeah,
but
I'm sorry.
When we come up with it, we'll share it.
So I'm curious about the entertainment side of things. Just let's touch base on that, and then we'll talk about art. But you were an actress and a singer and in a rock band. Tell me a little bit about that, and what were you able to accomplish with that?
Okay. I was in a rock band to make money to go through school. And so using scholarships and that, I got a degree in musical theater and psychology. That was, I could have been a very rich doctor who sang for free. Instead, I was a poor actress who gave free advice. Anyway, so I went on to do a lot of stage work, and then went into film, and I did a lot of commercials to keep. I was a single mother, and so to keep my family afloat, I would do the commercials. I sold pianos on the side. But acting and singing was my passion, especially singing. And all along the way, I was also doing interior design, some really high-end. And I opened a business called Authentique, and one of my galleries is still called that. And I would go to France and pick up beautiful architectural pieces. I would go into the countryside by myself with a big van and go through people's barns and old chateaus that had been locked up for 100 years. And I would talk my way into those places, and then my shipper would go out into the country and pick them all up for me, and I would get a huge container full. And my business, Authentique, was based as an interior design business. And also art. I'd bring back art from France as well. And while I was doing that, I was also still singing and acting and promoting the arts. And so while I was doing that, I was also on the city council for the arts. I've done that quite a few times. And on the board of a lot of theaters, and just promoting the arts in any way I could. And so while I was doing all of that, I was filling my home with art from all over the world. And every room was tastefully packed with gorgeous art and a very eclectic look. And when I was 45, I got very ill, and I came out of that illness having lost one of my vocal cords. So I could no longer sing. And after I grieved for a few months, I thought, what can I do that would promote art, promote the spirit of art, promote the light of art? Because I believe that any time a piece of art goes into a home, the spirit of that art and that artist is also there. And so if I couldn't sing anymore, I wanted to represent someone who was still bringing light to the world. And so I changed my direction, and the euro helped me do that because the French francs were really good going to France, but the euro was not. And so Authentique became a gallery, and since I could no longer sing, I put all of my efforts into this, and I feel every time I sell a painting, I hear the applause for that artist. I know what that applause feels like. I know what it feels like to have people appreciate what you've done. And while mine was more vocal, I love to call the artists, let them know that their pieces have sold. I like to put it online on social media so all the other artists can see that their contemporaries have sold something, and celebrate in that art being appreciated.
Absolutely. You know, you have, first off, your story is fascinating. And you have, first, I would call you a person who has get up and go. You just don't let anything get in the way. You've always been, sounds to me like the term aggressive may be a little bit too much, but you have a lot of initiative.
Can we call me
assertive? Assertive, absolutely. And I was, while you were telling the story, I was thinking about how important those skills are for artists as well.
That's true.
I mean, you have to, you have to have a little bit of assertiveness, aggressiveness, if you will, and you have to be willing to put yourself out there and promote yourself. And you've had your story has got a sad yet a happy ending because you've been able to reinvent yourself, and you just didn't let that stop you. And I think that's something that all artists certainly could learn from.
Yeah, resilience. That's a good word.
Resilient.
I will go back to something that a director told me years ago. I was in a play, and it was a large play in a large city, and I had a major role in it. And all of the artists were going to the newspaper. That was way back before the computer, so they were waiting at the newspaper so that when the first newspapers came out, they could read the critique, the review of the play, and find out how they did in that play by reading the newspaper. And so I was there, and my director went there for a little while, and he said, "Jane, how do you think you did tonight?" I said, "Oh, I did well." He said, "How did you feel that you connected with the audience?" And I said, "Really well." And he said, "How did you feel about your performance in all?" I said, "Great. I felt great about it." And he said, "How did you feel about it being spontaneous?" And I said, "Very spontaneous." And he asked me more questions. And then he said, "Then walk away from that newspaper, because it doesn't matter what that reviewer thinks or doesn't think. It only matters if you made something authentic, and if you delivered it, and if you prepared it and presented it, and it was accepted." And it was really good advice. So while maybe I cut the reviews out and put them in a drawer somewhere, I really didn't base my talent on one person's review. And I can really draw the attention back to art, that when the artist prepares something, when they paint something, when they create something that's authentic, that's not being painted for a monetary reason, or not being painted over and over and over again, but rather something that springs from them, that is perfectly authentic to them, then those pieces are the ones that resonate with people. Those pieces are amazing, and the artists take a chance on those, and I love it that they take a chance, not knowing if it will be accepted, but rather that it is accepted within themselves.
You know, I think that's a really great discussion to have, because there's so many stories, and you've heard them all, I'm sure. You know, you will. I once had a gallery say to me, that barn painting that you did sold really, really well. Could you get me about 10 more paintings of the Little Red Barn? And I said, no, because, I don't want to do that. And the gallery owner was a little bit perturbed with me. How do you walk that fine line as an artist between doing what you know is going to produce an income versus doing what you love and what resonates with you?
Well, I've had a lot of discussions through the years with artists, and I believe that as long as you're painting barns and it thrills you, and that each piece is unique, each piece has its own flavor, its own life. As long as you wake up in the morning and you are excited to paint that barn, then it's authentic. But as soon as you get up in the morning and think, okay, I've got to paint a barn, and by lunchtime you've painted the barn and you can't even remember between one painting and another one which one is which, then that's the time to stop painting that barn.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. I think that I teach marketing, and I know that someone can manipulate marketing and use it in their favor, but I don't necessarily think it's a good idea. And certainly there are people who make good livings doing that, but sometimes you talk to them, it's like I just feel like I'm going to a job every day. It's not really enjoyable for me anymore.
Right, and then it's a commercial work, and you've gone into almost making prints with your paintbrush. You could almost number that painting as if it's a print. I will tell a story without. I'll try not to let on who the artist is. I was hiking in California about 10 years ago, and I was going up the coast, and there was off of Bodega Bay. There was a little village, tiny little thing, hamlet, and there was a big antique store. But when you'd go upstairs, it was the deceased California artist, and it was amazing to me. I love that kind of thing, and so as I was looking at it, and I was seeing the Fisher paintings and Maynard Dixon's, and I was just loving it. I saw two pieces across the way, and they were obviously done on during the same trip. They were painted the same size. They were also framed identically, and it looked like it was a triptych. And I thought, oh, that's nice. And I went over to them, and they were so fresh and so fabulous. And I couldn't read the signature. I was sure I didn't read the signature. I'm sure I didn't read it right. I couldn't believe it. So I turned to the gallerist, and she said, "Yep, that's who that is." And I said, "Oh no, when did he give up his true talent to paint storybooks?" And anyway, I don't know that he enjoyed getting up every day painting a storybook, but I know that on that day, I know that came from his heart, and that he was thrilled, and that light came down his arm through his brush and painted those strokes and brought that scene to life. And I know the power of those two pieces, and I know that day he enjoyed getting up and painting.
Well, and I think, there's also the day, not every artist knocks it out of the park every time, right? So we all have stories of historical works of art that people have paid ridiculously high amounts of money for that are bad paintings just because it's got the Monet signature on it or something. We meaning artists, all have stacks of stuff that we haven't signed, or maybe we signed and regret signing it. We're not letting it out in public, and then somebody dies and the family puts it out there, and if the artist has a big name, it sells anyway. But just because you have a big name doesn't mean you're doing great pieces of art, does it?
Well, Well, that's true. In fact, in my own home, I have one of the most unfortunate Maynard Dixon etchings that he probably ever did. But I love it because it's Maynard Dixon. So yes, I totally understand.
Well, and some of that goes back to your passion for that individual and what that individual stood for, but sometimes
yes.
not.
Oh, yes. And I just saw his beautiful show in Scottsdale in the museum there a few months ago, and they had 100 of his pieces. And yes, it's I bought that because it was an honor to his work, his life.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad to have it.
I saw that show. It was fabulous, absolutely fabulous.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
I had to stay there for 2 or 3 hours. I could not. In fact, the other people I was with, they went on and did something else for the day. I just said, drop me off. This is fabulous.
Yeah. Some shows have that effect on us. And so talk to me a little bit about, I want to learn about the where in the world is Plein Air thing, and we'll get to that. But since we're kind of on this subject, you're dealing with lots of artists. You're dealing with artists who are fairly well developed at certain levels. The biggest question I get from people and when I teach my art marketing is, it's how do I get into a gallery? When do I know I'm ready to be in a gallery? I'd like to know your thoughts on that. When is somebody ready to be in a gallery? When are they not ready? What are your expectations of them if you decide you want to put them in?
I could give a whole workshop on what you just asked. So let me try to bring it down to bullet points. When an artist has gotten to a point where their pieces, when they're really, really finely painted, they are not particularly ready for a gallery. In order to be in a gallery or to even be out there in people's minds and have the attention on them, they have to do work that's outside of painting. They have to do marketing. And they have to start marketing themselves way before they're in a gallery or way before they get attention. So I would have them enter shows, the little shows. I would have them enter things that are juried for sure, and maybe in art museums, in galleries that when they're having a separate show. But to go to these outside events, I've judged Driggs Digs, which you promote a couple of times. And, these are those shows, those plein air shows, where they go out and they learn and then they are judged. They need to put themselves out there and be judged. They can't just be a good painter. They can't be a great artist and be known and be ready for a gallery.
Okay, but I want to interrupt you. I want to interrupt you.
Okay?
Yes, but I want to interrupt you on that point because I want to cement that point in a little bit. There are artists who would say to me, in response to what you just said, they'd say, "But that's her job. My job is to paint." Tell them why that's not fully your job.
It's not fully my job. In order to get into a gallery, you have to prove yourself in these other ways. You have to already be known. The galleries that I have are filled with artists who have done their due process, years of work, years of going to those smaller shows. It's also good for artists to be known by the other artists, and so going to workshops is important. Because another artist will look at a new artist and say, "Oh, your work is really good. Let me call my gallery and I will suggest you." And so I've gotten a few artists through the years. One, Catherine Statz, called me and she said, "Jane, you'd be a fool not to carry this new artist." well, I honor what Catherine Statt says, and so I started following the artist, and then help that artist along the way to get more known, so that they could be in the gallery. When you're in a gallery, especially the ones that I have, it's up to me to bring in artists who are at the same level as the other artists. It would not be fair to the artists I represent to bring in someone who is not up to par to them. Also, they need to have a name behind them to be fair to the other artists I represent. Was I clear on that? I don't know if I was clear.
As a matter of fact, I can tell you a story, and I want to hear your story because you said you had an example story. But I remember an artist calling me and complaining because he went into the gallery that was representing him. His first time visit, he had sent the stuff, and he was complaining that he was hanging next to a completely unknown artist who was underdeveloped, and he actually pulled out of the gallery because of that, because he felt like he deserved better.
That's true, and so you need to these artists need to be in galleries where they are with other artists that are at their level, and also not just their level of painting, but their level of fame, of how well known they are. That's really important. And so there are different levels of galleries too. I'm not Musée d'Orsay. Although some of my artists are really, really good, but I'm not at that level. So I will go back and I'll tell my story too. So I was judging with let's see, one of the other artists, either Dave Santianas or Doug Braithwaite, was the artist that you had out there for your workshop. And we were judging the show at the end. And because I'm from there, I don't mind going up and judging that show. It's fun. And there was a really good artist, really good. And both of us went, who is this? Because they didn't have the names on them. Of course, some artists we can tell because of the style who they are, but we had no idea who this was. And we both said, yes, that they get the blue ribbon for this. And so then when we were handing them out, I said, okay, here's this piece right here. Who are you? Who is this? And out from the crowd came this young boy with his, he's really shy and kind of looked up, through above his eyes, his eyebrows, and he's going, it's me. And I said, how old are you? I shouldn't have said that, but it just came out. And I rarely have a filter anyway. So I said, how old are you? And he said, 27. I said, my goodness, this is amazing. And then I said, do you take classes from Scott Christensen or Matt Smith? And he said, oh, no, but I would love to. I went, okay. So I said, talk to me a little later. And so he gave me his story, and he had just graduated from college. He was a young father. He had just had their first baby, and he was delivering pizzas in Idaho Falls, Idaho. And I said, you are so good. You were born with this. And I said, you need to take from Scott Christensen. He goes, well, I can't afford that. And I can't afford Matt Smith. And I can look at their pieces and be inspired by them, but I really can't afford anything. And I said, well, come to Salt Lake and let me talk with you. And that's when I had Illume Gallery in Salt Lake. So he came one afternoon and we sat on the couch, and I said, this is how you get into a gallery. I said, first of all, your website is not good. And let me show you how to do a website that will draw more people, and then you need to keep that website up. And what are you doing on social media? well, nothing. Okay, this is what you do today. And I said, let's get you onto Facebook right now. I said, you'll have to get yourself onto Instagram because I don't know how to do that one. But then I said, now you need to join these plein air shows and put yourself out there. And I told him the plein air shows that he needed to do. And so I was telling him all these things. And then I said, and you need to take a class from Collie Wisson, who's coming to do a workshop on light direction. And I said, you could get a lot from him for light direction. And he said, well, I can't afford that. And I said, just come to the class. And so I got him to come to the class. Collie was on board with me there, really kindly on board with me. And he took that class and took everything to heart. And now on social media, whenever this person sells a piece of art, Collie Wisson is the first person that says, yay, that was good. I also said you need to do all sorts of workshops, and the other artists need to know you're good. And you need to make friends with the other artists who are at your level. And then I said, one day when you have gotten a national award, then I will help you more, and you can be in our gallery. And he said, okay. And he was very humble about that. And then it came into my mind, actual voice that said, Jane, you just gave him a national award, with the Driggs Digs thing. And so I brought him on, and he's one of the only ones I've brought on that has not already gotten a name for themselves. And because I knew that where he was going, I knew that he had this talent. And you guys know it too, and it's Kimball Geisler. And now look where he's going. And he just needed some mentoring. I called Anne Brown and said, there's a new artist, you've got to see him, you've got to look at him. And Anne Brown has always called me and said, look at this artist. And I've called her and said, look at this artist. And I said, look at this artist, Kimball Geisler. And Plein Air magazine just gave him an award, and we need to watch him. This was 5 years ago. And so I hope that I'm answering your question on how to get into a gallery.
Yeah, so what I think so, yes. I mean, I think the point that you're making is that you really need to, you've got to build a national brand, you've got to advertise, you've got to be seen. I have had other gallerists tell me that they watch the ads in the magazines, and they say, okay, I see somebody, I think this person has potential, and they keep watching them for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years because they want to see if they're consistent. Are they continuing to build quality? I would imagine that a body of work is really critical. You want to make sure that they're consistent, that they're not giving you one good piece. We've all been through, we've judged shows where somebody put a piece in and it did really well in the show, only to find out that, it was painted in a workshop and the instructor painted half of the painting. Those are the kinds of things that you want to avoid. You want to make sure that you're on top of making sure you've got this body of work and making sure that people know who you are. So I think you answered it.
That's right.
And now I want to ask you another question about this because all gallerists are getting approached all the time. I was sitting in New York City with a gallerist there, and we were having a meeting, and he said, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to catch up on my mail while we're talking. And he's opening things, making faces, and throwing it in the garbage. I said, what are you doing? And he said, well, these are all submissions. He said, I get 500 or 1,000 of these packages a month. He said, I got another 2,000-3,000 emails. He said, it's really a waste of time. He said, I really should have a full-time person just to go through this stuff. He said, I don't know why I even bother opening it because it's very, very rare that I find somebody. What is that like from your perspective? I know that you're very encouraging and you want to help artists and you want to do the best you can for them, but I've heard gallerists tell me stories about, they're in the middle of a meeting with somebody, a collector, and some artist walks in and interrupts the discussion. You're about to sell a painting and they say, hey, I want to show you a painting. They just walk in unannounced. Help artists understand your perspective on just getting randomly approached.
I do not like it when people just walk in the door, and I have had sales that have been ruined by that, and that I believe that that's disrespectful anyway. I wouldn't do that myself, but it's hard. Again, I do get a lot of requests online, and they even find out my cell phone, and I do get a lot of requests. And what I would rather have happen is if they are good enough, if they'll go to an artist who I know and who I respect, and have that artist introduce them to me.
Right.
Then at least I know that it's gone already through, that process of being judged.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
I don't have time, like this other gallerist, to look at everyone's work. I'm really picky about the art that I bring into our galleries, and about the artist. And there are other things that I could tell you about of how I choose artists for the galleries that has nothing to do with their actual work. And I will. I think it's important. I will say that in just a moment. But if someone wants to get into a gallery enough, and they friend me on Facebook, and if I look through their things and see that they're good enough, then I'll, press yes, I will accept you as a friend. Then I can see their work without them it being in my face. And so that's good.
One gallerist told me that they made up a dummy name for Facebook so that they didn't know they were being watched.
Oh, what did you just say? Because you broke up.
I'm sorry. I said one gallerist told me they made up a dummy name and friended different artists under that dummy name so they could watch them without knowing that they were being watched or being approached.
Oh, if I know that I have a stalker, they're gone. I don't like that at all. I'll go back to what you were saying too. If they're in magazines, because I love that, I look at them at night, and I can see their pieces, and then maybe an article is written about them. That helps as well. Also, I really like going and have gone to the Plein Air Convention, as you know, many times. And I see a lot of artists that way and make acquaintance with the artists who I'm interested in. And so it's good for people to go to these conventions because they're not only learning how to paint better, but there are other people there like me who are watching them and watching their careers. And so many of my artists came from the Plein Air conventions that I've gone to, that you have hosted. And that was not a plug for you. That's the truth.
But thank you for the plug anyway.
So it's important that they go to those. And especially, the Plein Air Convention is the biggest one. They need to go to that. Well, everyone needs to go to that one.
Well, the one thing that we've discovered is the role of other artists is so critical because let me give you an example. Charlie Hunter came to my Adirondack event, which is about 100 people, and nobody knew who Charlie Hunter was, and everybody responded to his work, gave him positive feedback, and he learned the ropes of the whole plein air world. He was able to understand it a little bit more after that week. And then after doing that, these artists were all of a sudden telling other people, including gallerists, about him. So, it's that networking, that whether it's the Plein Air Convention or something I do or something somebody else does, it's really important to get out there and become part of that community because you need others lifting you up.
100% right. One of the biggest things that I told Kimball was other artists need to know you and know your work, and you need to get out there and get known by them, and that's probably the very first thing and the very most important thing that can be done is for other artists to know your work.
Right.
Before I go on, do you want to talk any more about that? Because I want to talk about another thing that I look at when I'm bringing someone on.
Please do. Let's go ahead.
Okay. Once I love someone's art, it usually now takes a few years for, or if ever, because it has to fit into the gallery. I have to know that I can sell it. I have to love that art, because if I don't, I'm not going to be able to sell it. So besides loving the art, I actually follow the person, and I get to know who they are personally, how they react to people, how their relationships with other galleries, how are they at being a team and working together. And so the personality is also very important to me, and it also comes through their work. I mean, if they're a good person and they've got all of these positive things about them, that's going to come through their work as well. But they have to be team players. In our three galleries, which are very different, I have a gallery, the Mission Gallery is based in plein air work, and a handful of the very best plein air artists are represented there. Authentique is representational with contemporary lines and contemporary colors, and so a little bit more loose. Then we have Illume Gallery that's extremely representational. Now, we have this show once a year called the New Vision Show, and all of the artists are invited to come to that. And they come and they actually call it a family reunion, and they think of each other as family, and they work together as they are a family. And when one of them sells something, the comments that you get on Facebook and in other places are from their family.
It's a celebration.
Other people in our galleries, besides other comments as well. But the camaraderie that is in this group of artists is amazing. And when I bring on a new artist and we announce it, the other artists in our galleries, no matter which gallery they're in, say to this new artist, "Welcome to the family." That is important. That the artists are not jealous or even envious, but that of each other, but they're rather very supportive. Whether they have sold something that month or not, they're supportive of the artists who have. And so that also comes across when you walk into a gallery, and that feeling is already there. And so that's really important.
Talk to me.
I'm bringing on someone.
Talk to me about. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well,
okay.
I was going to ask
There's
you.
Another thing. I may have a really good artist that really belongs in the gallery, but right now I'm looking at James Crandall's work while we're talking, and Joseph LaRusso. They're both in front of me. If an artist came to me and they were really good, I mean, they're so good and they fit into everything I just said, but they look a little bit like Joseph LaRusso or they look a little bit like James Crandall, I'm not going to bring them into the gallery because I'm not going to hurt the sales of the people I already represent.
Right. Makes sense. Now, what about the behavior on social media? How does that impact how you feel about an artist?
I actually do watch that. And when I see positive things, when I see people who are building another artist up. That's what I've been talking about. It's really important. That's important. It's important that as an art community in the world that we support each other, that we're not in this as lone wolves. We're this one society of beautiful artists, whatever level they are, that are just supporting each other. It's important to me that I see supportive comments.
And how do you feel
from other artists?
If you see an artist who's making political statements or trashing another artist or being negative?
They will never be in my gallery if they're trashing another artist. One of the things that is, this is ironclad. Our artists may not speak badly about any artist, not just artists in the gallery, but any artist, and or about their work. They may not speak badly about another gallery because, again, we're all doing this for hopefully the right purpose, to present art and to let the artists paint another day and to feed their families and to put art into homes that then are brightened and made better by it. So negativity is I can't deal with negativity. I can't. Now, as far as when you're getting into political things, because I have my definite views, I do not put them on social media. For me, there is a place for those views, and I get active in the community. But as far as online, I'm representing not only my views, but I'm representing the galleries and all of the artists who I represent. So I do not get into the negative political arguments. When I see them, I pass them by, and I don't read them.
Well, what I'm wondering about
eventually I don't get very many.
What I'm wondering about is when you see an artist, let's say you're considering an artist to come into the gallery, and then you see them making negative political comments. I had, just in the last month, I had 2 different people reach out to me, and for 2 different artists, and they said, I am not going to buy a video of that artist because that artist was so negative politically and I disagreed with them, and you need to tell these people, keep your mouth shut because you're alienating 50% of the people. I don't tell anybody what to do, what not to do, but I'm just curious from your standpoint how it affects business, because I'm sure you have buyers on both sides of the political fence.
Oh, I do. And I would advise that if you would like to do your art, have a different Facebook page for that, and have a political one if you want. But yes, it does affect sales. It does affect that. If you're not on one side, you're the other. Why don't we just leave that out? So I'm with you. On that.
Okay, so I want to talk about one other thing. You've done this fabulous event now, probably 6-7 years in a row, which is called Where in the World is Plein Air? Will you tell us about the event, how it started, and give us a little understanding of what's happening with it now?
Okay. Well, it's going on right now. It just went live last Wednesday, and it's the 7th year. And so one night I was thinking before I went to sleep about different ways to market the art. And I'm not a tech person at all. I hire that out and wisely. And so I went to sleep, and in the middle of the night, I woke up with this idea. that was so detailed that I woke up and I wrote it. I have paper by the side of my bed, and I wrote it in detail. And I had never seen it. It was back in the day when you did not see videos of artists online. This was 7 years ago, so I had never seen this before. But I wrote down this whole thing in detail. And I went back to sleep, and I woke up in the morning and read that, and I thought, oh my goodness, I don't even know what I'm talking about. And I took it to a technical person, and I said, I want to do this, and I need to create a website, and I need to create an excitement for this idea. And it was an artist who was helping me, and they said, well, do you think it'll work? And I said, I don't know. I think it will. I said, it sounds like a good idea. And he said, well, isn't it your idea? I go, oh, kind of. I wrote it down. But anyway, so I called people from Plein Air. I called Anne Brown, and I called one of your other associates at the time, and I got advice and to see if they thought that this was a great idea. And what it is we have artists who paint. At the time, they were painting live, and I'll tell you how that has changed. But they were painting live, so they would paint anywhere they were in the world. They would do a 55-second video of where they were, who they are, and showing with their phone where they were painting. And then halfway through, and talk about the painting, talk about the day. And then at the end, they would do a final video and then show the piece. And then we had a website that was created just for this. And so those videos would go up live online as the artist would get finished. They would upload that to our website. And I had 6 different people taking the videos and putting them on at the time. And we had a few crashes and things like that we had to work through. But it was a fun idea. And in fact, I've appreciated that you, Eric, gave it an endorsement when we were first starting this. I appreciate that you supported me in this new idea. It's no longer a new idea. People are online every day, putting on their videos and doing that. This was just before that happened. So now we used to do 3 days in a row. That was really hard on the artist to do 3 different pieces. And it was live then. Now they only do one piece. It's one day. And this year, because of the virus and being able to get out, I said, whenever you can, and this was a few months ago, whenever you can in the next few months, do your videos, do your one day. It's still live, but it was live on that day. But then they sent those videos to us, and then we put it live all together with all of the artists on June 10th last week. And you didn't lose the excitement because they were still doing it live wherever they were in the world. But I wasn't sure they could get out and do it because of the virus. And it's done really well this year so far.
Well, it's a fabulous idea, and I think it's really done a great job of bringing artists together and exposing the whole concept of plein air. And you and I both know that the more people we can tell about plein air painting, the better we're all going to be. So congratulations. You deserve a big round of applause. So everybody is listening and clapping right now.
The artists deserve that applause.
Absolutely.
That's who deserves it. And
Absolutely.
My tech people.
Well, Jane, I just wanted to say applause and thank you for all you do for our arts community. There are galleries who are businesses who are in some regards isolated from their artists. And then there are galleries who are communities. And you're an example of a gallery which is a community, an example of a gallery which goes way beyond what many galleries do, in the sense that you care so deeply, that you really honor your artist. You're very, very supportive, and I know nobody ever has a bad thing to say about you, because that's kind of the way you operate your life, is you never say anything bad about anybody else, but you are so encouraging to all of us, and I just want to thank you for the inspiration.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to who knows who.
Well, Plein Air Podcast now is listened to in about 70 countries around the world, and
that's what I thought. So
yeah,
who knows who we're talking with?
So just since you've got a lot of opportunity, there are people out there who would love to know where to learn more about your galleries. What websites should they visit?
If they go to any three of our websites, at the bottom of each page, you can flip over into the other websites, into the other galleries. But Illume Gallery of Fine Art, ILLUME Gallery of Fine Art.com. And then at the bottom of the page, you can go over into the Mission Gallery and to Authentique Gallery, and you can push into the Where in the World is Plein Air show as well.
Excellent. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. I've been wanting to do it, and I'm glad that we finally got around to it. And again, I honor you, and I thank you for all you do for the Plein Air community. We wouldn't be anywhere like we are now, including our magazine, by the way. You've been very supportive of us and told people about us. And so I just can't thank you enough. And I wanted to thank you publicly, because you've had such a huge impact. And, I wanted to talk about one other thing, and I will touch on it just quickly before we go. And because I think that it's really important for artists to understand. The life of owning a gallery is not an easy life. And I've watched threads of artists who are saying, the galleries are not earning their money, and we should deserve more, and what are they doing, and we don't need them anymore. And I think that most people don't really understand what it is you have to go through. You have rent to pay, you have enormous electricity bills because of all your lights. You have shipping and unpacking and employees and salespeople and advertising and all of these things that culminate into what we call as a gallery, which is the way you earn your percentage. Do you have any thoughts on that you want to share real quickly so people understand your perspective on this?
Well, I appreciate the things that you did bring up. Most people will not buy an artist unless they have seen that artist's work in real life. They may go online later and say, I've seen this work. I love it. It's consistent. I've been to galleries to see this. And so maybe then they'll buy online. But they wouldn't have if they hadn't seen it in a gallery already. Galleries are important. If they were not here, the artist's work the sales would go way down. And one day someone would have enough of that artist's work, and they would lose, that customer, and there wouldn't be any new customers to come up if there weren't galleries. And I'm a collector as well, and I have to see the pieces in real life. And also, as you've mentioned, that people don't know what the life of a gallerist is. It's 24 hours a day. There are a few hours in the night where I'm not getting texts when everyone's asleep in the United States. But then, people are up late on the West Coast. They're up on the East Coast. And I will answer a call. I'll make a sale in the middle of the night. I'm always on call. The galleries are, I'm a mother first, and relationships are important to me. The gallery is my big relationship. Anyway, I eat and drink it. I work all day long for it. I'm on the top of ladders and hanging things every day, and making things look beautiful, and making sure that they're in the website and in our software correctly, so that I can make a sale when that time comes. There are a million things to do, and I love it, and it's worth it to me. And also, coming up and down a ladder is not too bad for keeping you in shape, and so that's good. And I think, though, without galleries, that most artists' careers would peter out eventually.
You know, there's a thing called resting on your laurels. And you and I have both seen it. I remember being approached by an artist one time, and he said, you know, Eric, I don't understand. He said, I became a big name. I was a pretty famous guy. I was making a great living as an artist. I sold a lot of art, and now I don't sell anything and nothing happens. And I said, yeah, you know why? And he said, no, I don't know why. I said, you're resting on your laurels. You've been eating and living off of a reputation you built 10 or 15 years ago, and you haven't done anything to feed that reputation in 10 or 15 years.
That's right. I'll give an example. I represent Daniel Gerhardt, and yesterday I made a big sale for us, which was great. I was willing to drive 4 hours and take it to their house and let them keep it for a few days. So we made the sale together. Daniel's really good at knowing that he has to have new clients and new collectors. And the way he does that is he keeps his work in galleries. I don't have many pieces of his at a time, but I do have some, and it's important to him. And he's a good name to say, because he could rest on his laurels.
Well, for a few years, but unless, you know, even guys like Richard Schmid, you know, they're keeping their names alive by doing books. They're keeping visible. You know, it's very important. If you have to have visibility, because, you know, as I teach in my marketing, 10% of your audience is going away every year, and you have to replace that 10%. If you have a year like this, it might be 50% or 60%.
That's right.
Like 2008. And so if you're not constantly bringing new blood in, and people are going out of the market, you know, you could become forgotten in 10 years.
You can. And so that's why they need to be in galleries.
Absolutely. Well, Jane, it's been an honor having you on the Plein Air Podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks again to Jane Bell Meyer. I think she's a very special person. She has done so much for we artists and the Plein Air community. She's a rock star in my book, and I have learned so much just talking to her this time around. She's just an amazing person. So thank you, Jane, and I hope you guys get to know her, go to her website, and so on, get to know about the galleries. So speaking of learning, are you guys ready for some marketing ideas?
This is the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Make More Money Selling Your Art, Proven Techniques to Turn Your Passion into Profit.
In the Marketing Minute, I try to answer your art marketing questions, and you can send them in. Email them to me, eric@artmarketing.com, and I'll try to answer them on here. Here's a question from Ron in St. Louis, Missouri, who says, what am I getting from gallery owners is that they are dealing with known artists, and someone like myself who's not gallery promoted or known would never get seen. What should I do? Well, Ron, first off, I think the interview that we just listened to probably answers that. I hope you heard the one with Jane Bell Meyer that we just did on the Plein Air Podcast. The reality is that what galleries want is someone who will sell. Everything about, you know, you want everybody to sell. You want, and what sells is what is known. So if you can prove to them that you will sell, that's going to give them the confidence to go after you, to try someone new. But it doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes they'll watch you for 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years. You just never know. And it starts by taking control of your career. You have to build your marketing yourself. You have to build your brand yourself. You have to make yourself visible by entering and winning art competitions like Plein Air Salon, getting into shows, and even starting with smaller shows to build up a reputation, build up a body of work, and market yourself. And yes, it's kind of the old, once I don't need them anymore, I don't need them, but you'll still benefit from having them. So I hope that helps you. Next question comes from James in Denmark, who says, you've mentioned marketing in your magazines a couple of times, and you do so consistently, which makes good sense. As you say, go where the money is. I like to say, stand in the river where the money is flowing, baby. My gut feel is that the billionaires amongst your readership are reading Fine Art Connoisseur rather than Plein Air Magazine. Can you enlighten us about which is better for artists to reach collectors? Well, I cannot enlighten you completely because, James, it kind of depends on your strategy. But first off, let me answer that question directly and then indirectly. Fine Art Connoisseur is a high-end collector magazine. Yes, I built it out by targeting wealthy, billionaire-level, multi-millionaire, upper 1% people. I've got lots of them. I've got over 300 billionaire readers. I've got a lot of really, really wealthy people who have second, third, fourth homes. Some of them have jets and helicopters. A lot of people who consider themselves buyers or collectors in the type of art that we tend to be, which is representational. And they are affluent, and they tend to like expensive paintings. But, sometimes they buy paintings that aren't expensive. But Plein Air Magazine, on the other hand, is subscribed to by two different groups: people who follow and attend and buy from Plein Air events. And there are many, many, many people who go around and they follow the artist around and they go to the Plein Air events and so on. Artists are actually substantial buyers of art these days. And we're discovering that there's now a blended category of plein air collectors who have become artists. This was discovered originally by Plein Air East, and people who had attended year after year after year buying paintings got interested in painting and became painters, yet they're still buying paintings. And there are a lot of affluent people who use plein air painting as a hobby, as a pastime. It's big in the baby boomer category. It's really big in a lot of categories, and a lot of professionals, a lot of doctors, a lot of professionals who have plenty of money are also artists. So the myth about starving artists isn't necessarily true. Now, there are starving artists out there. There's no question. There are some that make their living entirely from art, but there are plenty who have money in the bank, money from jobs, money who are employed, and they're spending money. So we're finding that Plein Air Magazine actually fulfills kind of both of those groups. So it's a different kind of collector. It's more the people who like landscapes and who like plein air landscapes and people who really love to follow the artist around and go to the events and so on. So it kind of depends entirely on your strategy. All right, so you got to think about the strategy. There's not a which is better. It kind of boils down to what you're selling, who's your ideal customer, who's your target market. These people might be perfect for you or not in these magazines, or maybe there's something else you should do. But first, you have to do your homework about what you really need to reach, who you need to reach, who buys your art now, what they all have in common. Do your homework. And if you go to YouTube and search Streamline Art Video, I've done tons and tons of marketing talks on my daily nude broadcasts, and a lot of marketing content is there, and you can listen to those and find out a lot about that. But also there's a lot of blog material at artmarketing.com. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful for you, all right?
This has been the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads. You can learn more at artmarketing.com.
Okay, remember to sign up for the virtual Plein Air experience, Plein Air Live. Go to pleinairlive.com. And if you can come to the Plein Air Convention, go to pleinairconvention.com. And don't forget, the end of the month is your last chance to enter the Plein Air Salon. Go to pleinairsalon.com. Now, if you have not seen my blog where I talk about art and life and lots of other things, check it out. It's called Sunday Coffee, and you can find it at coffeewitheric.com. This is always fun doing the podcast. We will do it again sometime, like next week. And meanwhile, I'll see you then. I'm Eric Rhoads, publisher and founder of Plein Air Magazine. It's a big world out there. Go paint it. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
This has been the Plein Air Podcast with Plein Air Magazine's Eric Rhoads. You can help spread the word about plein air painting by sharing this podcast with your friends. And you can leave a review or subscribe on iTunes so it comes to you every week. And you can even reach Eric by email, eric@pleinairmagazine.com. Be sure to pick up our free ebook, 240 plein air painting tips by some of America's top painters. It's free at pleinairtips.com. Tune in next week for more great interviews. Thanks for listening.